how do you determine when it's time to increase output and decrease input? I'm not sure if this is referring to food or training or
All the above.
could be. We could just address all
Yeah.
of the above.
Yeah. Again, so energy balance is extremely important, and that's what this question is covering. The challenge I have in answering this question is my approach ultimately is always going to be glass half full, not glass half empty. So before I make further adjustments to energy balance, meaning decrease in what you're taking in, increase in what you're expending, I'm going to try to feed that individual first to see if that can help increase the process of increasing, leptin, ghrelin, things that are going to help induce fat loss without having to make further reductions in calories or increases in energy expenditure. And Nadia is a great example of that. That's what we're doing during her prep. Mm-hmm. We haven't continued to decrease the food. Rather, we found the baseline and we're increasing calories methodically, which is allowing her to continue to drop off that base plan. Yeah. The reason why this is so important is as you go through a prep, just naturally your thyroid is going to downregulate. And a lot of people have a very adaptive metabolism. And the more adaptive your metabolism is, the more you have to overfeed to keep that same level of food working for you. If you just ride out a consistent level of food, that's the reason why your physique is stalling, is because you're not giving your body any overfeeding to keep it, producing and progressing on that same level of food. So I would always encourage you within proper variables to try to feed up first. Now, granted, there comes a point in time where that doesn't work or to the same extent. So keep the overfeeding in, but then you also need to adjust the amount you're overfeeding and then also adjust the baseline diet. So I guess in chronological order, when you start to stall, if you're not overfeeding, start to do some overfeeding. We can do a whole video on refeeds, high days, things like that. I would like to do that. Yeah. But start there, see how that works. And what's important is when you refeed, don't look at what happens in 1 to 2 days time as much as what happens in 5 to 6 to 7 days time. And this is something I encourage Nadia with, because we started refeeding on Fridays. And what I told her was all I care about is what you weigh the following Thursday or Friday. Mm-hmm. Now, granted, to some extent, if you're gaining a lot of weight immediately post refeed, I would say you're eating too much. But 9 times out of 10, just let your body baseline out. Even if you gain 3-4 pounds, if you're down 6 by the end of the week, that's a +2 net. Okay. So that's good. All right. So don't really worry so much what happens the first 2 to 3 days. It's more so days 4, 5, and 6, what's happening. So that's where I would start. And then if that starts to stall, then you need to adjust the refeed, adjust the baseline diet. And then ultimately, like I said, you're also going to have to adjust what you're doing in terms of your energy expenditure. And I'm saying this again, I keep honing in on the same things because it's so important. Within increasing energy expenditure, make sure that you're not decreasing your NEAT through the day, or else you're not helping yourself. Okay. So if you add, let's say, a total of 60 minutes of cardio a week, but then you're laying on the couch an extra hour throughout that week, you've negated that increase. So your daily activities need to be consistent. And one thing I don't want you guys to take away from this is oh, Matt's saying to never rest. I'm not saying that. But those daily things that are a part of your daily structure, if you start to pull back and sit on the couch more, you're missing out on it. All right. So you do need to prioritize rest. You do need to prioritize good sleep habits. You do need to have off days. Nadia is still at 10 and a half weeks out of nationals, the biggest show of her career to this point. She took a full day off, no cardio, no training. All right. She let inflammation clear. She's had, she woke up great this morning. So these are all very important things. So again, it's not so much about blanket statements to me, but just really understanding what each variable does within the energy balance equation, picking one at a time, assessing that, and then making further manipulations from there.
Yeah. Another thing to keep in mind too, that a lot of people don't realize is as you pull food and lower food, it becomes harder to perform those cardio sessions. It becomes harder to perform that daily exercise when it comes to activity outside of the gym and cardio. With less food, I find that myself especially, I don't have the ability to perform as well. And as my food gets lower, it's harder for me to just act out on my normal day-to-day activities. Whereas with the good baseline that we have now. I think because we're not toying with the food so much and we're just making little adjustments to cardio and daily activity here and there, I'm still able to go out and perform as I would. Where the need for recovery comes into place is after just hard training sessions and after I need it, like after that HIIT session that I keep talking about. But with food being pulled, you're not gonna any easier be able to go about your daily steps or like your chores, for just to be simple, like doing laundry, cleaning the house, walking the dog, things like that all just become that much harder. So I think having your food in a good spot and using that as one of the last resources to pull from when it comes to pulling food and taking things away. I would rather add cardio or add steps, add activity throughout the day, and add spikes in your calories throughout the week, like with the refeed, rather than just pulling, and then reeling in that line until you have nothing left to reel in.
Right. And then something else too that she just said that was a great point. So when you're doing this and when you're assessing these variables, the one thing you have to take into consideration is your performance in the gym. There's going to come a point where if you keep trying to keep the food the same, but you keep adding cardio and adding cardio and adding cardio, you're going to really limit that ability to recover. So within that being said, there is a baseline, because if you're pounding your legs all the time, that's going to impact your training. And the higher you can keep your training performance, the better all this is going to work. So you have to consider that within the equation. If you're not recovering properly, if you keep adding more work, at some point in there, your body's going to start to fight you back. All right. So something else that I would do is if you baseline, if you stall, and I do this with girls specifically that their body really fights them. Heather Tillery, a great example. There were several times I said, okay, I want you to take the next 2 to 3 days off of training, off of cardio completely, and just stay on your baseline diet. Because we just, for you girls, like girls are fragile. You are fragile. Okay. So you have to take that into account. Doesn't matter how mentally tough you are. Your body was not created to do what you're putting it through. Now you might argue with me on that, but that's my belief system. So with that being said, like you have to navigate the rest well. And sometimes even if you don't want to, like the rest is the answer. And when you rest, just keep your food the same. Let your body rest, let your body recover, and then continue to manage the performance aspect of it.
Yeah. And then listening to your body's own biofeedback, like we were discussing, how in tune I am with my own recovery. And over time, you'll be familiar with this and just get to know your body, to what signals it's giving you in terms of the stress that's being occurred during training, during just dieting for a contest in general. I've gotten to a place where I really am in tune with what my body is giving me signals on as far as recovery and indicators like hunger and fatigue and stuff like that, and being able to take all those into consideration. And I think we'll get to a certain point in my prep where cardio is going to get to a certain point and I'm going to feel as if, okay, we should maybe not add cardio and rather pull some food here. Like it's
for sure
to be in tune with what your body's telling you. And sometimes your coach isn't going to read all of that. You have to be monitoring that yourself.
And giving the feedback.
Yeah. Communicating the feedback with your coach. Because it's hard to see that in photos. You can see inflammation, you can see stress in the form of inflammation, but knowing, like walking around feeling like a log as I was the past couple of days, that all of those signals mean something to me and give us a good indicator of how to proceed with the next steps. So just, with all that, super important.